Hey, this is Zulema Urbina, and tune into the relay for the latest news in boxing all around the world. Thank you for supporting myself and other female boxers. We truly appreciate it.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, and now it's time for our weekend picks. First up, a fight that's happening far, far away from here, all the way in Denmark. Dina Thorsland, reigning WBO champion, is going to be defending her WBO title against the challenger of Mexico, former champion Loba Munoz. And I've talked about this fight before in several videos. I like Dina for the fight. I like Dina on points.
Unbeaten Dina Thorsland.
Loba's on a 4-fight winning streak after having lost to unbeaten Mayeli Flores. Back in 2019, what was a 5th-round knockout loss. That's right, Loba was stopped.
And she has since rebounded.
Against 2 girls that got upside-down records, 2 pedestrian-level opponents.
4 overall.
None that exhibit the talents of a Dina Thorsland. Aggressive, capable. Zelina Munoz might be a lot more experienced than Dina Thorsland, having fought as a professional in 58 professional bouts to Dina's 17.
But I don't smell an upset here.
Or a knockout. I think this fight is going to go to the cards, and when it does, I think it's going to be Dina Thorsland's hand raised. We then move on to the matchroom card, and what is a far more difficult fight to hedge, far more difficult fight to predict than Thorsland versus Munoz. Harper versus Baumgardner.
For the WBC super featherweight title.
It's going to be the first time that the reigning champion Terry Harper has fought since the Katharina Sanders fight
a year ago.
I'm going to be honest with you here. There's a chance that Alicia Baumgardner tomorrow could do to Terry Harper what Jamie Mitchell did to Shannon Courtenay. There's a chance, and it's more than just an off chance. There are similarities between Alicia and Terry. Both of them have a quality jab right hand.
They're both great boxer punches.
Both of them have exhibited good athleticism, good in and out game, fight by fight. Perhaps a slight edge to Terry because Terry's fought better girls than Alicia has so far. Terry and Alicia, both of them have the ability to act as both the aggressor and the defender. Both of them, they have this in common. Though there is a question as to which one among them is going to be that aggressor and which one among them is going to be that defender. I think that because Alicia Baumgardner is far away, not on home turf, not on home soil, she's the one that's got something to prove, and she's the one that's got to get on that front foot.
She's the one that's got to get on that front foot to prove it.
You don't coast on foreign soil. That's what they say, and Alicia didn't board that plane.
She's not flying all the way to Terry's neck of the woods to get on a back foot.
Alicia Baumgardner, like many of us, took in last weekend's action between Mayer and Hamadouche, that unification match at this same weight. And we all saw how they did Maiva on those cards. Alicia's fully aware that
she has to make it decisive.
Based on that, my guess is that Alicia's going to be the aggressor. Terry's going to be the defender. Terry Harper, who under normal circumstances is quite capable of defending herself and fighting behind her jab and even asserting herself.
Getting respect.
From an aggressor, from an aggressive opponent, because Terry, like Alicia, packs a punch.
Who's the bigger puncher?
You might have to give that edge to Terry, because Terry's faced better girls than Alicia. The best girl that Alicia Baumgardner has ever fought is Greece's own Christina Lenarditu, but that was a fight that Alicia lost, whereas with Terry, she's been in there with Eva Wahlstrom, Natasha Jonas, Katharina Sanders. My honest opinion on their power is that there may not be that much between them, though ultimately Terry Harper's power is more proven at a higher level than Alicia Baumgardner's. So slight edge in power to Terry Harper, slight edge in height as well, and experience. The issue here is activity, rather the lack thereof. Terry hasn't fought in a year. She hasn't fought since the Sanders fight of last year. She suffered a fracture, a refracture of an old injury.
To be honest, it makes me nervous.
On her back hand, her power hand, her right hand, the hand that she looks to set up with that jab that she never abandons. The inactivity, the injury, I don't like it. Especially against someone as aggressive as an Alicia Baumgardner, a hungry, capable fighter that's looking for just this kind of opportunity to make a statement. I don't know what logic, if any, went into the matchmaking here, aside from supreme confidence.
The supreme confidence of a champion.
There really is no other way to explain it. There were easier paths to ease Terry back into activity than this one, than facing someone like Alicia Baumgardner, who here on this channel, year after year, I have described as a dark horse in the super featherweight division. One to watch out for and one not to look past. That's who Terry's going to be fighting, having not fought in the last 12 months. I mean, you have to respect Team Harper's confidence, you do, but this is counterintuitive. It borders on foolhardy, fighting someone like this off a year of inactivity, a surgery from an injury.
I don't know what they're thinking.
What they were thinking when they landed on this opponent, this particular opponent choice, I don't know what the real rhyme and the reason is behind it, aside from a team that thinks that their girl can get the job done. Industry insiders state that the Choi fight is actually ready to go. That Hyun-Mi Choi, the reigning WBA super featherweight champion, is still over there on the matchroom side of things, waiting for Terry to take care of business. But if Alicia beats her tomorrow, well, we may end up with 2 fights instead of just 1. So, let's get down to brass tacks. Tell you what I think, I'll tell you what I think. I think that in terms of power, both girls might be about even. Under normal circumstances, I'd give Terry the edge in speed. I think she's a little snappier than Alicia Baumgardner, though mid-range to inside, I like Alicia's fluidity. I think she has the better variety of punches. That's mid-range to inside, though ultimately, both of these girls' best punches are their straight punches.
Both have in and out game.
They have things in common, with the difference being that Alicia Baumgardner has seen action in the last 12 months. Terry Harper hasn't, though Terry Harper overall is a more experienced fighter at a higher level than Alicia is. So while Terry might be more experienced, Alicia might actually be sharper. I think Terry's going to go through the gears in those first couple of rounds. I think those first couple of rounds are going to be Baumgardner rounds, and I think Terry's going to find her way into this fight by rounds 4.
Rounds 4 and 5.
Contrary to last week's mid-range to inside shootout, I don't think that's the aesthetic that this fight is going to have, because both of these girls are jabbers. Both of these girls' best punches are their straight punches, and while it's going to be
entertaining,
I don't think it's going to be a phone booth fight. I do anticipate that one, if not both of these girls, might hit the deck. One, if not both of them, will get dropped. I see fencing of the lead hands, fencing of the jabs. I see Alicia Baumgardner being the aggressor, with Terry Harper being the defender. I see both girls having moments of success, and I see this fight ending in a draw. I think Terry's going to opt to stick and move, and Alicia Baumgardner is going to try to impose her will. I see Alicia Baumgardner giving a good account of herself.
she's definitely up for this.
But I'm not sure that the WBC title is going to change hands tomorrow. Terry Harper showed very good survival instincts in the Jonas fight. She knew to tie her up when she was hurt.
She knew how to survive.
Terry has more experience on this kind of stage than Alicia does, and I do think Alicia is going to give her a hell of a fight, but I'm not sure that the judges are going to rule in her favor. I think that short of a knockout, it's very difficult for Alicia to win on the road.
She does mean to knock Terry out, though.
There is that to consider. Alicia Baumgardner knows exactly what she wants to do and how she wants to do it. It's just a question of whether or not Terry can stop her from doing it. I'm going to go conservative on this one, I am. I'm going to go with a draw. Then we come to the main event of that same card. Kid Galahad's first defense of his newly obtained IBF title against the very lively, always game, Kiko Martinez. And this fight is a little easier to edge for me than the one we just talked about, because I feel like Kid Galahad is going to fight a similar fight to the fight that Zelfa Barrett fought against this same Kiko Martinez, just a better version of it. I could see Kid Galahad sticking and moving and staying behind his jab, establishing that distance and maintaining it throughout. If you've ever seen Kiko Martinez in action, you know what kind of fight he's trying to fight. You know what he's trying to do. He's trying to turn it into a barroom brawl, mid-range to inside. Kid Galahad, slight height advantage.
Slight reach advantage, I think, as well.
Physical attributes and advantages aside, it's not just having them, it's knowing how to use them. And the fighter's base style overall, as they say, styles make fights. And Kid Galahad's style against Kiko Martinez creates a situation to where Kiko's the aggressor,
And Kid Galahad is the defender.
to be honest, when I say that I think Zelfa Barrett was very fortunate to be awarded that decision against Kiko Martinez, because I felt that Kiko Martinez won the fight. Though Zelfa Barrett, he's not as experienced as Kid Galahad. I don't think he's as strong a puncher either. I think Kid Galahad can get the kind of respect that Zelfa Barrett didn't get from Kiko Martinez.
He can fight a better version of the same fight.
Stick and move, keep the smaller man out, don't let him turn it into a war, don't do half the work for him being a stationary target, don't trade with him. That's what I think the strategy is going to be, that's what I think the game plan is. And if Zelfa Barrett was able to win a points decision fighting the fight that he fought, the version of it that he fought, then I think Kid Galahad, he can do a little better than that. I've got Kid Galahad on points tomorrow, successfully defending that IBF title. Moving on to the Golden Boy Promotions card, former WBC and WBO flyweight champion of Mexico, Areli Mousinho is going to be in action against Jackie Calvo. Areli, who was in action earlier this year on the undercard of Serrano versus Bermudez, that was a Ring City, USA card.
Areli's on an 8-fight winning streak.
Having not lost a fight in the last 5 years, the last time she suffered a setback was to her countrywoman, Kiko Chavez, and given Kiko's resume, her body of work, there's no shame in that. Since then, Areli has amassed 8 professional victories over 8 professional fights, sporting a professional record ahead of this fight of 29 wins, 3 losses with 2 draws to Jackie Calvo. Jackie, who sports a professional record of 14 wins, 6 losses with 2 draws.
Areli's with Joel Diaz now.
Fighting under the Golden Boy Promotions banner, the last year and a half, there have been a lot of changes for Areli Mousinho. She was fighting under the Zanfa Promotions banner south of the border, whereas now she's with Golden Boy Promotions, and she's taken on Joel Diaz as her trainer. Joel Diaz, who used to train Tim Bradley back in Tim Bradley's heyday. Areli Mousinho, dubbed La Ametralladora, translated into English, the machine gun. She ain't got that name for no reason. Areli is an action fighter. She likes to go in there and throw a lot of punches, and I think tomorrow on the undercard of Munguia versus Rosado, that's exactly what she's going to do as she cruises to a points decision, because I have her beating Jackie Calvo. I've heard some insider rumors that Areli Mousinho means to challenge Argentinian champion Debra Ana y Lopez for what is Debra's
WBO title.
And with a promoter like Golden Boy Promotions behind her, fighting on the DAZN platform, it's safe to say that that is a fight that can happen. If Areli wins tomorrow, she brings herself that much closer to that kind of fight, that kind of world title opportunity, and who knows, maybe if Areli picks up that WBO title, they'll make a unification match between her
and Marlena Esparza.
We then come to the main event of that same card, the showdown, Puerto Rico versus Mexico showdown between Jaime Munguia of Mexico and Gabriel Rosado, the experienced boxer, the Philly Rican, now based out of the West Coast, coming off that big win over then unbeaten Bektemir Melikuziev. And I have to be honest here, this isn't Bektemir Melikuziev that's in front of Gabe. This is a guy who has a lot more pro experience than Bektemir does, though some of the same tendencies. Beck the bully was a mid-range to inside guy who liked to punish his opponents by laying it on and laying it on thick. And Munguia,
He's that kind of guy.
listen, Gabriel Rosado's knockout, Bektemir Melikuziev, really was a sensational victory, a knockout of the year candidate. But Bektemir Melikuziev, ahead of that Rosado fight, was a guy who only had 7 professional fights total. 7 professional fights under his belt. How does that compare with Jaime Munguia?
Was 37.
37 professional fights total. 37. It's safe to say that while Jaime Munguia's quality of competition isn't the best, he's been out there more times with more guys by far than Bektemir Melikuziev had been in. At least a few of those guys, they're interesting guys like Toriano Johnson, like Takeshi Inoue, like Liam Beefy Smith at junior middleweight.
I just get the sense that Jaime is more durable than Beck was.
And I get the sense that super middleweight, 168 pounds, is a better weight for Gabriel Rosado than 160 pounds is. That's right, I think that Gabriel Rosado's optimal weight is up there at super middleweight, but this is a middleweight contest.
And I feel like that favors Jaime.
Gabriel's a big boy for middleweight, perhaps too big, and I feel it's taxing on his energy reserves, his durability, his ability to perform, cutting all the way down to 160 pounds at age 35. So between that and a very aggressive customer, a come-forward pressure fighter that can take a shot, and Jaime Munguia, the situation I see is Jaime Munguia potentially stopping Gabriel Rosado. That's right. It's been a long time since Gabriel Rosado has been stopped because he's a veteran, because he has great survival instincts and decent boxing skill.
Gabriel Rosado hasn't been knocked out in years.
I think a lot of people don't realize that it's been about 7 years since anybody knocked Gabriel Rosado out. That was in 2014 against the then middleweight puncher David Lemieux. David Lemieux of Canada. That's the last time Gabe suffered a knockout. So Gabe's always had durability and toughness, and I
still think he's got that.
But against this guy at this weight, I'd say I don't like it. I think Jaime Munguia is going to press the action. I think he's going to stop Gabe. Finally, the boys are all weighed up for the Benavidez versus Kyron Davis fight, a fight that I'm really not all that interested in, to be completely honest with you. The safe bet really would be David Benavidez, though who really knows? What's more interesting to me is what took place at the weigh-in. That David Benavidez did not weigh in within the super middleweight limit. He weighed in just above it at 169 pounds. You can't exactly accuse him of blowing the weight because
This isn't a title eliminator.
ever since Jose Uzcategui tested positive for a banned substance, there's been a lot of confusion in reference to David Benavidez's next fight, whether or not it would be a title eliminator that would put him in a position to become a mandatory for one of Canelo's belts. And I told you guys, that's not the case. This ain't a title eliminator. This ain't even a super middleweight contest, technically.
The winner ain't gonna be Canelo's mandatory challenger.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I think that David Benavidez perhaps should have moved up to light heavyweight 1, maybe even 2 fights ago. I think he's a young guy who's busting at the seams, trying to stay at 168 pounds, because at 175 pounds, the PBC ain't got nobody for him to fight. They got no belts for him to win.
So he's killing himself to make super middleweight.
David Benavidez has lost the WBC title outside of the ring 2 times, at least 2 times. The first time was due to testing positive for cocaine, but the second time, more recently, it was because he blew the weight. That was last year. Here he is, weighing in at 169 pounds.
What do you think that's all about?
David Benavidez isn't a moderately sized super middleweight. He's big for the weight, very big, and he's a young guy, so that means as his metabolism slows, it will become that much more difficult for him to continue to make this weight.
And sooner or later, it's gonna show up in his performances.
Getting on that scale dry, feeling depleted, feeling worn out from the weight cut, sooner or later, it's gonna show up.
You know, he said he's willing to come down to middleweight for Jermall Charlo.
But how does he plan on making the weight? Chopping off one of his legs? He, like many others, is holding out hope that he can perhaps win the Canelo Alvarez sweepstakes. But if Canelo Alvarez decides to fight someone else on PBC's Isolation Island, perhaps Jermall Charlo.
Remember that Canelo might come back in May.
Remember, that's 5 months into the year of 2022. Afterwards, he might then return in September.
What's David gonna do till then?
Assuming he's even in the running, assuming that Canelo Alvarez places any emphasis, any priority at all.
And fighting David?
It's a good fight. It's a good fight for Canelo Alvarez. I wouldn't mind seeing it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not against it. I'm just telling you that there are a lot of those kinds of fights out there for Canelo. Benavidez is a good fight. So is Charlo. So is Andrade. So is Dimitri Bivol. So is Artur Beterbiev. Hell, so's Joe Smith Jr.
And so's the winner of Golovkin versus Murata.
There's any number of people out there that have their own personal preferences as to who they would like to see Canelo Alvarez fight next. And they're trying to make these guys seem like they stand out, but they really don't. There's nothing for Canelo Alvarez to win from David Benavidez. He gains as much fighting Benavidez as he would fighting Jermall Charlo.
I mean, he's the one bringing all the money and the fans to the table.
The way I see it, David Benavidez is one of many solid choices for Canelo Alvarez, though ultimately there's no actual incentive to fight him. And because looks a lot like making super middleweight is getting harder to do for him,
He's stuck between a rock and hard place.
Charlo won't fight him. And there's no guarantees that he gets a Canelo fight, though at the same time, if he were to try to move up to light heavyweight, who would he fight?